Hey, tonight we explore the whispered secrets of medieval scholars, those dedicated minds who once illuminated the darkness with nothing but candlelight and unwavering determination. As the modern world sleeps under electric skies, we'll journey back to a time when knowledge was precious, books were treasures, and the quest to fill one's mind with wisdom required battling the heaviness of eyelids and the quiet call of slumber. The night was both enemy and friend to these devoted learners, a silent companion in their pursuit of understanding the mysteries of God and nature. If you're enjoying this peaceful moment, please like, share, and subscribe. What dreams are you seeking in the quiet corners of your mind tonight? Dim your lights now. Let the gentle hum of your room become the whisper of history's pages turning. Settle into your most comfortable position and allow your breath to slow. Let your thoughts wander gently into the past, where the scratch of quill on parchment and the soft glow of beeswax candles await you. You step quietly through the stone archway of the monastery scriptorium, your woolen slippers making no sound on the worn flagstones. The year is 1267, and outside these walls, the world has long since surrendered to darkness. Within, a different battle wages, the struggle against sleep itself. You are Brother Thomas, 23 years of age, recently assigned to the night scribes of this Benedictine monastery, nestled in the rolling hills of northern France. The weight of your novice's robe hangs heavy on your shoulders, still unfamiliar after 3 years since taking your vows. The rough fabric brushes against your ankles as you make your way to your appointed desk. Around you, 12 other brothers have already taken their places, each illuminated by the gentle glow of tallow candles that cast long, dancing shadows across the vaulted ceiling above. The air carries a complex perfume, the sharp tang of oak gall ink, the earthy richness of parchment, the honeyed sweetness of beeswax, and beneath it all, the perpetual coolness of ancient stone. This is your 4th consecutive night of copying, and already your eyes feel heavy, your mind drifting like autumn leaves on a stream. Brother Jerome, the elderly master scribe, notices your stifled yawn as you settle onto your wooden stool. Without a word, he approaches and places a small clay cup beside your writing desk. Inside swirls a deep amber liquid that releases vapors both bitter and aromatic. "Drink," he whispers, his voice like dry parchment. The night is young, and the word of God awaits your hand. You lift the cup to your lips and sip cautiously. The taste is startling, sharp with herbs, warm with honey, and carrying an undercurrent of something faintly bitter. Recognition dawns as the warmth of it spreads through your chest, then outward to your fingertips. This is the fabled wakefulness tonic that Brother Anselm, the monastery's herbalist, prepares only for the night scribes. The ingredients are no mystery. You've witnessed its preparation in the herb garden. Dried sage leaves for clarity of mind, rosemary to strengthen memory, a hint of valerian root to calm the nerves without inducing sleep, and the precious Armenian ephedra that the traders bring at great expense, all steeped in honeyed water and left to brew beneath the noon sun on St. John's Day for its special potency. As you drink, Brother Jerome lights another candle on your desk, this one made from the finest beeswax rather than common tallow. The flame burns cleaner, brighter, with less smoke to irritate your eyes. It is a small kindness, but one that acknowledges the importance of the text you'll be copying tonight, a portion of St. Augustine's City of God requested by a bishop from a neighbouring diocese. "Remember," Brother Jerome murmurs as he moves away. The monks of old would prick their thighs with needles when sleep threatened to overcome them. We are fortunate to have gentler methods now. You smile at this common jest among the scribes. Tales of ancient desert fathers tying their beards to the ceiling or standing in cold water through the night hours to remain awake for prayer are legendary within monastery walls. Your methods are indeed gentler, though no less demanding of discipline. The tonic begins its work as you arrange your tools. Quills freshly cut from goose feathers, a small knife for scraping errors, pounce for preparing the parchment surface, and of course, the precious inks, black for the main text, red for important passages, and if you are particularly skillful tonight, perhaps Brother Jerome will allow you a touch of blue or green for an illuminated initial. You close your eyes for a moment, offering the prescribed prayer before beginning your sacred work. Lord, guide my hand that it may be worthy of transcribing your holy words. Keep my mind alert and my vision clear through the watches of the night. When you open your eyes, a new clarity has descended. The effect of the tonic, certainly, but also something more. The sense of purpose that has guided generations of monks before you, preserving knowledge through the darkest centuries, when the light of learning nearly flickered out entirely. The first hour passes in focused silence, broken only by the soft sounds of quills scratching against parchment and the occasional cleared throat or shifted weight on wooden stools. Your hand moves steadily across the page, forming each letter with care. The scriptorium holds no hourglasses or water clocks. Time here is measured by the burning of candles, by the completion of pages, by the creeping stiffness in your back and shoulders. When that stiffness becomes too pronounced, you employ another technique passed down through generations of night scribes. Setting aside your quill, you roll your shoulders in small circles, then larger ones. You flex your fingers, stretching each one individually, then press your palms together in a position of prayer that doubles as relief for cramping wrists. Finally, you perform the exercise that Brother Ambrose taught, raising your gaze to the distant wall, then focusing on something near, back and forth 10 times to refresh tired eyes. Around you, other brothers employ their own methods for staying alert. Brother Martin quietly recites psalms under his breath, the familiar cadences keeping his mind engaged, even as his hand works mechanically. Brother William has a small bowl of dried apple slices beside him, taking one occasionally to provide both nourishment and the sharp tartness that momentarily brightens the senses. The eldest among you, Brother Nicholas, rises every half hour to walk a complete circle around the scriptorium, his joints requiring movement to prevent the deep ache that comes with age and stillness. As midnight approaches, signaled by the distant tolling of the monastery bell calling some brothers to matins prayers, a deeper quiet settles over the scriptorium. This is the most dangerous hour, when the body most insistently demands its rest. Brother Jerome rises from his desk at the front of the room and begins a slow circuit, carrying a brass lantern whose light supplements the candles. When he reaches you, he pauses to examine your work. You feel the weight of his gaze on the page, noting every letter, every spacing, every subtle flaw. After a moment, he makes a soft sound of approval and places something beside your inkwell, a small cloth pouch tied with string. For the midnight hour, he whispers before moving on. You open the pouch and find dried mint leaves and a few precious cloves, imported at great cost from distant eastern lands. Following the example you've seen on previous nights, you crush one leaf between your fingers and inhale deeply, allowing the sharp, awakening scent to clear the fog gathering at the edges of your mind. You place a clove on your tongue, not to chew, that would be wasteful, but to hold there, releasing its intense, spicy heat slowly. The midnight bell finishes its toll, and those brothers assigned to prayer file out quietly, to be replaced by others whose night has been divided between sleep and devotional duties. You remain, your assignment clear, 4 more hours, 8 more pages, before you may seek your pallet and the brief rest allowed before dawn prayers. As the tonic's effects begin to fade, you employ another time-honored technique. Quietly, methodically, you begin to read aloud the words you are copying, barely above a whisper. The act engages both mind and body differently, preventing the dangerous drift into automatic copying where errors most often occur. The Latin phrases feel solid in your mouth, tangible as stones, keeping you anchored to wakefulness. The words speak of vigilance appropriately enough. Augustine's reflections on the watchfulness required of those who seek the heavenly city. You find yourself smiling at the coincidence, or perhaps the divine reminder of your purpose. The physical act of copying is but the outer expression of an inner discipline, training the soul to remain alert for wisdom in all its forms. When your back begins to protest more insistently, you employ the seated stretches taught to all novices during their first months in the scriptorium. First, you press your palms against the edge of the desk, straightening your arms to push your torso away without leaving your seat. Next, you place one hand on the opposite shoulder, drawing the elbow across your chest. Finally, you tilt your head gently from side to side, feeling the release of tension along your neck. 2 hours past midnight, Brother Jerome appears again, this time carrying a tray with small cups of warmed wine steeped with herbs. This is another tradition, the midnight fortification. The wine is watered, as befits the ascetic life, but contains enough warmth and sweetness to revive flagging spirits. You accept the cup with a grateful nod, sipping slowly to make it last. The warmth spreads through your chest, and you notice the clever addition of warming spices, cinnamon, perhaps a touch of ginger, that stimulate without dulling the senses as stronger wine would do. As you resume your work, you become aware of another monk struggling nearby. Brother Marcus, only recently joined to the night scribes, fights a losing battle against heavy eyelids. His head nods forward, jerks upright, then begins to descend again in the ancient rhythm of the exhausted. Before Brother Jerome can notice, for sleeping at one's desk brings penalties of additional prayer vigils, you quietly reach over and touch his arm. When he startles awake, eyes wide with momentary confusion, you silently demonstrate another technique passed down through generations of scribes. Taking a discreet pinch of salt from the small dish kept for cleaning quills, you place it on your tongue, allowing the sharp, unpleasant sensation to jolt your senses temporarily awake. Brother Marcus follows your example with an expression of gratitude, the sudden grimace at the taste replacing his drowsy features. The communal aspect of the night vigil becomes more apparent as the hours deepen. There is solidarity in this shared battle against natural rhythms, this collective dedication to preserving knowledge through the labor of many hands. When Brother Matthias begins to softly hum a plainsong melody, no one objects. The gentle sound provides another anchor for attention without disrupting concentration. 3 hours past midnight brings the deepest challenge. Outside, the world has reached its darkest point, and within your body, processes slow to their ebb. This is the time the Desert Fathers called the Demon of Noonday, paradoxically named for the hour when the spirit is most tested, regardless of the sun's position. Your eyes blur momentarily, and the letters on the exemplar you're copying seem to swim before you. This is when you recall Brother Jerome's counsel from your first night among the scribes. When the mind cannot focus on the whole, attend to the smallest part. Following this wisdom, you narrow your concentration to a single letter at a time. Not the entire text, not even the full word. Just the immediate curve of the S you are forming, making it perfect, then moving to the A beside it and onward, letter by letter across the parchment. The technique works, as it has for countless scribes before you. By dividing the overwhelming task into its smallest components, you find each one manageable, even as exhaustion seeps into your bones. For particularly difficult passages, you employ another practiced method, tracing the words with your finger before copying them, creating a physical memory to guide your hand when your eyes grow too tired to maintain perfect focus. 4 hours past midnight, and the most sacred practice begins. Brother Jerome stands and softly begins the office of readings, though it is not yet dawn. The night scribes join in, voices hushed but present, reciting the ancient prayers while their hands continue working. This is perhaps the most profound technique of all, the marriage of physical labor with spiritual practice, allowing the mind to occupy two realms simultaneously. The Psalms have a rhythm that guides your hand, so that each word copied becomes a form of prayer itself. This is not merely a method to stay awake, but the very heart of the monastic calling, to make every action, even the mechanical formation of letters, into an act of worship. As you recite the familiar words of Psalm 119, I rise before dawn and cry for help. I hope in your words. My eyes are awake before the watches of the night, that I may meditate on your promise. Their meaning takes on immediate physical reality. You are living the psalm even as you copy Augustine's meditation upon it. In the final hour before dawn, Brother Jerome allows a small indulgence. From a ceramic pot, he distributes a fingerful of honey to each scribe, pure energy for the final push, and a symbolic sweetener for having consumed the more bitter herbs throughout the night. The honey dissolves slowly on your tongue as you complete your final page. Your hand has grown less steady, your letters slightly less perfect than when you began, but still worthy of the text they preserve. As you finish the last line, you notice that the quality of darkness through the high windows has changed. Not yet light, but no longer the absolute black of deep night. You complete the scribe's prayer at the bottom of the page. As this work is finished, so may my life come to its fulfillment in Thee, O Lord. Brother Jerome moves through the room, inspecting each completed section. When he reaches your desk, he examines your work with the same careful attention he has shown throughout the night. Finally, he nods and speaks the traditional blessing. May the words you have preserved bring light to others as you have kept vigil through the darkness. As you prepare to clean your quills and cover your inks, he places a hand briefly on your shoulder. You managed well for your fourth night, he says. The body learns this discipline in time. Each night becomes easier until watching becomes as natural as sleeping. You nod, too tired for words, but feeling the deep satisfaction that comes from work completed through difficulty. As you place your completed pages in the drying rack, you catch a glimpse of Brother Anselm entering with fresh herb bundles for tomorrow night's tonic. The cycle continues, as it has for centuries before you and will for centuries after. This quiet battle against sleep for the preservation of knowledge, for the glory of God, for the illumination of minds yet unborn. The first bell for Lauds rings, calling all brothers to morning prayer. You have completed your night's labor and will be permitted 3 hours of sleep afterward before resuming daily duties. As you file out of the scriptorium with the other night scribes, The first pale light of dawn filters through the eastern windows, catching the dust motes in its beam. Tomorrow night, you will return again to this quiet battle. Your eyes will burn, your back will ache, your mind will drift toward dreams, but you will persist, armed with the techniques refined by generations of scholars before you. The herbal tonics, the strategic movements, the communal support, the spiritual practices that transform necessary labor into sacred act. For now, though, you join your voice to the others in the first prayer of morning. Your tired mind finding new meaning in ancient words of gratitude for light after darkness, for perseverance rewarded, for knowledge preserved through one more night in a world where such preservation cannot be taken for granted. As you chant the words of thanksgiving, you realize that staying awake through the night has become more than a physical discipline. It is a metaphor for the scholar's life itself, for the constant vigilance against ignorance, the patient attention to detail, and the communal effort that keeps wisdom alive when it would be easier, always easier, to surrender to darkness and forgetting. And in that understanding, you find yourself already looking forward to the quiet hours of tomorrow's night, to the sacred struggle that defines your calling among the brotherhood of those who keep watch while others sleep. The sunlight grows stronger as it filters through the high windows of the church, and though your body longs for rest, your spirit feels curiously awakened, as if in conquering one night's darkness, you have glimpsed something of eternity's light. And now, this story draws to a close. Take a deep breath as we gently move forward in time, into the next chapter of your journey. Flickering candles cast dancing shadows across yellowed pages as midnight oil burns steadily in copper lamps. Time shifts forward, from monastery walls to the bustling Renaissance city, where knowledge flows like the Arno River, sometimes clear, sometimes muddied, but always in motion toward a sea of new understanding. You are Lorenzo Bardi, 19 years of age, apprenticed to the physician Dottore Alessandro Ricci in the thriving city of Florence. The year is 1487, and the world is changing rapidly around you. The classical knowledge of the ancients, long locked away in distant libraries or forgotten entirely, now flows into the city through newly translated manuscripts and the accounts of travelers. Medicine is transforming from a practice of medieval humors to something that might, with enough study and observation, approach a true science. Tonight, like so many nights before, you find yourself alone in your master's study long after the household has retired. The room smells of leather bindings, dried herbs hanging from the rafters, and the distinctive mineral tang of the anatomical specimens preserved in glazed ceramic jars along the shelves. Your eyes burn from hours of reading by insufficient light, yet you dare not light more candles than necessary. Beeswax is expensive, and your master, while generous with knowledge, is frugal with consumables. Before you lies a treasured volume, a partial Latin translation of Galen's On Anatomical Procedures, copied from an Arabic text preserved by scholars in distant Constantinople. The illustrations are crude but tantalizing, showing structures of the human body that contradict what your master learned from his own teachers. Beside it sits your own careful notes from yesterday's examination of a cadaver, a rare opportunity arranged through your master's connections with the officials who oversee public executions. Your hand moves to your face, rubbing eyes that feel like they've been scrubbed with sand. This is your fourth night this week, staying awake until the small hours, and your body protests the abuse. Yet time for study is precious. During daylight, You attend your master as he visits patients throughout Florence, carrying his instruments, preparing his remedies, observing his techniques. Only these stolen hours of darkness allow you to pursue your own investigations and questions. From your pocket, you withdraw a small leather pouch, a gift from Maria, the herbalist who supplies your master's apothecary needs. She noticed your exhaustion last week when you came to collect dried foxglove for a heart remedy, and pressed this into your hand with conspiratorial discretion. For clear thoughts, when sleep calls too strongly, she had whispered. A mixture the scholars at Salerno have used for generations. You open the pouch and inhale deeply. The aroma is complex. Cardamom dominates, with undertones of rosemary, and a curious sharpness you can't identify. Following Maria's instructions, you take a small pinch and place it under your tongue, allowing it to dissolve slowly while you return to your reading. The effect is subtle at first, then increasingly pronounced. The foggy edges of your vision sharpen. The heaviness in your limbs recedes. You find yourself sitting straighter on your wooden stool, your mind racing ahead through Galen's detailed descriptions of vessels and nerves with newfound clarity. But the herbal mixture is only part of your strategy tonight. Beside your open book sits a small ceramic cup filled with cold water. Another trick learned from an aging professor at the university, who claimed to have studied in Padua with the most dedicated scholars of the age. When attention wanes, you dip your fingers into the water and press them to your temples, the sudden coolness providing a moment of awakening. You reach for the cup now, performing this ritual before turning to a particularly difficult passage, describing the valves of the heart, a structure you observed yesterday with your own eyes, though your understanding of its function remains clouded. The house around you creaks with nighttime settling, and somewhere in the distance, the city. Watch calls the midnight hour. 4 more hours, you promise yourself. 4 more hours of study before allowing sleep to claim you, so that you might still be somewhat alert when accompanying your master on tomorrow's rounds. To combat the heaviness returning to your limbs, you stand and begin the sequence of movements that your master insists all his apprentices learn, derived, he claims, from ancient Greek practices designed to unite body and mind. You stretch your arms overhead, then bend slowly at the waist, feeling the pull along your back. Next, you rotate your shoulders, roll your neck, and finally perform a series of deep knee bends that leave your legs trembling slightly, but your mind more alert. Physical movement completed, you return to your stool, but change your approach to study. Experience has taught you that varying the method of engagement helps maintain alertness. Instead of silently reading, you begin to sketch the heart structure described in the text, forcing your mind to translate words into visual understanding. Your charcoal moves across the parchment, creating lines that approximate what you witnessed in yesterday's dissection. When this too begins to lose its effectiveness against encroaching fatigue, you shift again, now softly voicing the Latin text aloud, feeling the words form in your mouth, hearing them in the quiet room. The act of articulation engages different parts of your mind, creating new pathways for retention. An hour passes this way, your attention shifting between reading, drawing, and quietly reciting particularly important passages. The herbal mixture under your tongue has long since dissolved, but its effects linger in your heightened awareness and the slight acceleration of your heartbeat. When even these techniques begin to fail, you reach for your final resource, a small, leather-bound journal in which you've recorded observations from your master's practice. Turning to a blank page, you begin to write questions that have arisen during your study. If blood flows through vessels as water through channels, what force propels it? Does the heart create this movement? How do the valves direct this flow? The act of questioning, of challenging what you've read against what you've observed, awakens your mind more effectively than any herb or physical movement. This, your master has taught you, is the true essence of the new learning, not merely accepting ancient wisdom, but testing it against experience. As your quill moves across the page, forming questions that neither Galen nor your master has adequately answered, you hear unexpected movement from the front of the house. Footsteps approach, and you tense momentarily. Visitors at this hour are rarely harbingers of good news. The study door opens, and your master enters, his face drawn with exhaustion. He has been called to attend a difficult birth across the city, a process that has clearly lasted many hours. Still awake, Lorenzo? He asks, though the evidence is clear before him. Good. Fetch my instruments for childbirth. I require assistance. As you quickly gather the necessary tools, forceps designed according to a new pattern from France, scissors, clean linen, and tinctures to slow bleeding, Dottore Ricci glances at your open books. Galen on the heart, he inquires, raising an eyebrow. And your own observations beside it. Excellent. Tell me what you've learned while we walk. This unexpected test sends a surge of alertness through you. As you follow your master into the cool night air of Florence, you begin articulating your thoughts on the heart's chambers and valves, on the mysterious path of blood through the body, on the discrepancies between Galen's descriptions and what you witnessed in the dissection room. Dottore Ricci listens critically as you walk through darkened streets, occasionally nodding or offering a correction. The mental exercise of organizing your thoughts for his critical ear proves more stimulating than any of your previous methods for maintaining alertness. You ask good questions, Lorenzo, he finally says as you approach the home where his patient labors. Perhaps better questions than Galen himself thought to ask. Remember this moment, how your mind can achieve clarity even after hours of study, even in the depth of night, when purpose and necessity drive it. The body may demand sleep, but the properly trained mind can assert its dominion when required. The birth proves difficult, but ultimately successful. You assist your master until dawn breaks over the red-tiled rooftops of Florence, handing him instruments, preparing remedies as directed, observing techniques you've only read about in texts. The hours pass in a strange state of heightened awareness, your earlier exhaustion transformed into focused attention. When you finally return to your master's house, as the morning market vendors begin setting up their stalls, Dottore Ricci places a hand on your shoulder. Sleep for 3 hours, he tells you. Then meet me at the university. The professor of anatomy has arranged another demonstration, and what we witness tonight with the living may inform what we observe in death. You nod, understanding both the instruction and the deeper lesson. The scholar's life is not one of comfortable routines. Knowledge does not wait for convenient hours, and the dedicated student must cultivate the ability to remain alert and observant, even when the body cries out for rest. As you climb the stairs to your small chamber beneath the eaves of your master's house, you reflect on the night's unexpected turn. The techniques you've developed for extending your studies, the herbs, the cool water, the physical movements, the varied approaches to engaging with texts, served you well when suddenly called to practical application. You fall onto your pallet, fully dressed, your mind still racing with connections between what you've read in ancient texts and what you've witnessed with your own eyes. As sleep finally claims you, one last thought forms clearly. Perhaps this is the true scholar's discipline, not merely accumulating knowledge from books during designated hours of study, but training the mind to remain receptive and clear regardless of circumstances. 3 hours later, when your master's apprentice knocks on your door to wake you for the anatomy demonstration, you rise with surprising readiness. Your body still aches with fatigue, but your mind has absorbed the night's lessons well. You splash cold water on your face from the basin, chew a sprig of mint to freshen your breath and stimulate your senses, and straighten your rumpled clothing. As you hurry through the morning streets toward the university, you find yourself already planning tonight's studies with new strategies in mind. The translation of Hippocrates, recently acquired by your master, will be your focus, but you'll approach it differently, reading portions before sleep, then rising after midnight when the house is quiet to test your recall and extend your understanding. 4. Now exists the rhythm of the scholar's life in this age of reawakening knowledge, snatching understanding in the quiet hours between obligations, training body and mind to transcend natural limitations, seeing every challenge as an opportunity to observe, question, and learn. You quicken your pace as the university bell tolls, signaling the start of the demonstration. Around you, Florence pulses with the energy of commerce, art, and intellectual discovery. In this moment, despite your physical exhaustion, you feel profoundly alive and connected to the great chain of questioning minds that stretches back to antiquity. Those who, like you, fought the demands of sleep to capture some fragment of understanding by the dim light of midnight oil. The golden Tuscan sunlight streams through narrow streets as you race toward another opportunity for knowledge, your mind already anticipating the night to come, when once again you'll employ every technique at your disposal to extend your conscious hours into the domain usually surrendered to dreams. This part of your dream has ended, but your journey through history continues. The scent of cedar and sandalwood rises from ornate braziers, mingling with the clear desert air. Stars hang like polished jewels in the night sky, ancient and unchanging, yet revealing their secrets to those patient enough to watch their celestial dance through the long, quiet hours of darkness. You are Ibrahim ibn Yusuf, assistant to the renowned astronomer al-Battani in the thriving intellectual center of Baghdad. The year is 912 CE, and the House of Wisdom stands as a beacon of learning in a world where knowledge is treasured above gold. The night spreads above you like an inverted bowl of deepest lapis lazuli, scattered with the diamond dust of stars more numerous than the caliph's treasuries. Tonight marks the 5th consecutive night of observations, tracking the movement of Mars as it follows its retrograde path across the heavens. Your eyes burn with fatigue, your limbs heavy as lead weights, yet you must remain not merely awake, but acutely alert. A single misread measurement, one moment of inattention, could render weeks of calculations meaningless. You stand on the flat roof of the observatory, a structure attached to the House of Wisdom itself. Around you, astronomical instruments of brass and copper gleam in the starlight. The armillary sphere designed by al-Battani himself, the quadrant with its precise gradations for measuring celestial altitudes, and the astrolabe that fits in. The palm of your hand yet contains the movements of the heavens in miniature. Al-Battani moves quietly among these instruments, his aging form still straight and dignified despite his 70 years. His eyes, unlike yours, show no sign of fatigue. They remain clear and sharp as they have through decades of night watches. Ibrahim, he calls softly, prepare the astrolabe for the next measurement. Mars approaches the position we have been waiting for. You move to comply, fighting the heaviness in your limbs. As you adjust the delicate instrument, aligning its sights with the ruddy glow of the planet, you silently recite the techniques for maintaining alertness that your master has taught you over the 3 years of your apprenticeship. First, you control your breathing. Deep inhalations through the nose, held for 7 heartbeats, then released slowly through slightly parted lips. This practice, borrowed from Sufi mystics who maintain night-long vigils in remembrance of Allah, brings fresh vigor to mind and body alike. Next, you press firmly on specific points of your wrists, a technique learned from a Persian physician who studied the flow of vital energies through the body. The sharp pressure sends a subtle awakening through your system, temporarily pushing back the encroaching tide of sleep. Master, you say, presenting the aligned astrolabe. The instrument is ready. Al-Battani nods and makes his observation, calling out measurements that you record carefully on the prepared parchment, using a reed pen and ink that contains a small amount of fragrant musk, another technique for alertness, as the distinctive scent stimulates the mind when concentration begins to wane. Recording complete, you set aside the parchment to dry and move to a small table where a ceramic pot sits upon a gentle warming stone. From this, you pour 2 small cups of the special preparation that sustains Baghdad's astronomers through their night watches, a brew of strong green tea brought by traders from distant eastern lands, infused with cardamom, cinnamon, and most importantly, crushed coffee beans from Abyssinia. This bitter elixir is a closely guarded secret among the scholarly community. The beans themselves are rare and expensive, brought north by traders who deal in exotic substances from lands beyond Egypt. The resulting beverage is an acquired taste, sharp and astringent, but its effects in promoting wakefulness are unmatched by any other natural substance known to your community. You present 1 cup to your master with the appropriate gesture of respect. Right hand offering, left hand supporting your right elbow. Al-Battani accepts with a slight incline of his head and sips appreciatively. The stars wait for no man's comfort, he observes, a familiar saying among astronomers. But Allah in his wisdom has provided means for us to match our vigilance to theirs. You drink your own portion in measured sips, knowing from experience that consuming it too quickly will cause an unpleasant fluttering of the heart without improving its efficacy. The bitterness spreads across your tongue, followed by the warming spices that make it more palatable. As you wait for the next scheduled observation, you employ another technique for maintaining alertness: mental calculation. Al-Battani has trained you to perform complex mathematical operations without recourse to the counting board or written figures, insisting that such mental exercise strengthens the mind's resistance to fatigue. Calculate, he says suddenly, as if reading your thoughts, the arc between our last observation of Mars and its projected position at the next measurement. You close your eyes briefly, visualizing the numbers and their relationships. The calculation is complex, involving several trigonometric ratios that must be held in memory simultaneously. This is no mere test. The result will help verify whether tonight's observations align with the predictions derived from previous night's work. As you work through the problem step by step in your mind, you feel the fog of fatigue receding. The focused mental effort demands full attention, leaving no room for the seductive call of sleep. When you finally present your answer, Al-Battani nods with satisfaction. Correct. And now, apply the adjustment for the observer's position that we discussed yesterday. Another calculation follows, more complex than the first. By its completion, your mind feels sharper, more present in the moment despite the late hour. This is the paradox you've observed repeatedly in your training, that the mind, unlike the body, can grow more acute through certain kinds of exertion, rather than becoming dulled by them. The night deepens around you. From the city below come the occasional calls of night watchmen marking the hours. But otherwise, Baghdad sleeps while you maintain your vigilance alongside the stars. When even the coffee and mental calculations begin to lose their efficacy against mounting fatigue, Al-Battani gestures toward a small wooden box near the warming stone. The hour approaches when additional measures become necessary, he says. Prepare the awakening scent. From the box, you remove a small brass incense burner and several wrapped packages of aromatic substances. Following your training, you measure precise amounts of each onto the burner's surface. Camphor for sharpness of thought, ambergris for sustained attention, a touch of musk for sensory stimulation. Beneath these, you place a small coal from the warming stone, adding a drop of rose oil as the mixture begins to release its potent fragrance. The combined scent rises around you, neither pleasant nor unpleasant, but intensely stimulating. You inhale deeply, feeling the aromatic compounds clear the passages of your nose and awaken your brain as effectively as a splash of cold water. Al-Battani does the same, his eyes closing momentarily in concentration. The ancients, he remarks, believed that certain scents contained the essence of wakefulness itself. I have found no reason to doubt their wisdom in this matter. With senses refreshed, you return to the instruments. The hours between midnight and dawn are the most challenging for maintaining alertness. The body's natural rhythms pull strongly towards sleep, and even the most disciplined mind feels the downward drag of fatigue. To combat this, Al-Battani institutes the movement of the spheres, a series of gentle physical exercises developed specifically for astronomers during night watches. You begin with small rotations of the ankles, then the knees, hips, spine, shoulders, and finally the neck. The movements are deliberate and controlled, never vigorous enough to disturb the precise calibration of nearby instruments, but sufficient to stimulate blood flow and reawaken dulled senses. Remember, Al-Battani instructs as you complete the sequence, the body is the vessel of the mind. When the vessel stagnates, the contents grow cloudy. Next comes a technique borrowed from Indian yogis, controlled alternation of breathing through different nostrils, said to balance the opposing energies of the body and clear the channels of thought. You press your right nostril closed with one finger and inhale deeply through the left, then reverse the process, continuing for 16 complete cycles. Throughout these practices, your awareness of the sky never diminishes. Indeed, part of your training has been to maintain constant peripheral attention to the heavens, even while engaged in other activities. Now, even as you complete your breathing exercise, you notice a subtle change in the quality of light from a certain sector of the sky. Master, you say quietly, I believe a celestial event is occurring near Aldebaran. Al-Battani turns his gaze to the indicated region, then quickly moves to the largest brass telescope. After a moment of observation, he beckons you urgently. Well spotted, Ibrahim. A shooting star of unusual magnitude and duration. Quickly record its path against the fixed stars while the image remains fresh in your memory. You move to the star, chart spread on a nearby table, using your charcoal stylus to mark the trajectory of the meteor with precise notations of its brightness, color, and the exact time of observation. This unexpected event, a gift from the night sky, has burned away any remaining traces of fatigue more effectively than all previous methods. Al-Battani watches your work with approval. This is why we maintain our vigil, he says. The heavens, reveal their secrets only to the vigilant. Had we succumbed to sleep, this phenomenon would have gone unrecorded. The remainder of the night passes in a rhythm familiar to all astronomers, periods of intent observation, punctuated by careful recording, calculation, and the various techniques for maintaining alertness. As the sky begins to lighten almost imperceptibly in the east, a change visible only to eyes accustomed to the subtle gradations of night, you prepare for the morning prayer that will mark the official end of your observational period. But before that, one final ritual remains. Al-Battani leads you to the eastern edge of the roof, where both of you face the lightening horizon. Here, you perform the eye preservation, a series of exercises designed to protect the astronomer's most precious instrument after hours of strain in darkness. First, you cup your palms and warm them with your breath, then place them gently over closed eyes, allowing the accumulated heat to soothe tired muscles and stimulate circulation. Next, without opening your eyes, you rotate them in their sockets, clockwise 9 times, then counterclockwise 9 times. Finally, you focus on distant objects, then near ones, then distant again, strengthening the eye's ability to adjust between extremes. The eyes are the astronomer's primary tool, Al-Battani reminds you, as he has countless times before. Care for them as you would the finest astrolabe. As the ritual concludes, the first clear light of dawn spreads along the horizon. The stars fade gradually, not extinguished, but overwhelmed by the greater radiance of the sun. Your night's vigil complete, you assist Al-Battani in carefully covering and securing the instruments against the day's heat and dust. Before descending from the roof, your master pauses to survey the collected records of the night's observations, the precise measurements of Mars' position, the unexpected meteor, the subtle variations in brightness of certain fixed stars that you've noted with particular care. Knowledge accumulates like sand grains, he says, gathering the parchments. Each night, each observation may seem small in isolation, but over time, they form the foundation upon which true understanding is built. You nod, understanding that he speaks not just of astronomical knowledge, but of your own development as a scholar. Each night of maintained vigilance builds your capacity for the next, training mind and body in the discipline required for scientific observation. As you follow Al-Battani down the narrow stairs from the rooftop, your body finally acknowledges its profound exhaustion. You will sleep through the heat of the day, rising again in the late afternoon to begin preparations for another night of observation. This is the rhythm you have chosen, or perhaps that has chosen you. This inversion of natural patterns in service to knowledge. In your small chamber adjacent to the House of Wisdom, you perform one final ritual before surrendering to sleep. Taking a blank sheet of parchment, you record not astronomical observations, but your own experiences with the various techniques of wakefulness employed throughout the night, which proved most effective, which faltered, what new combinations might be attempted. This record, maintained faithfully throughout your apprenticeship, has become a manual of sorts, a codification of the astronomer's battle against sleep. Al-Battani has encouraged this documentation, suggesting that such practical knowledge is as valuable in its way as the celestial measurements that are your official work. The stars have been observed for thousands of years, he told you once, but the methods by which scholars maintain their vigilance are rarely recorded. Such practical wisdom disappears with each generation if not deliberately preserved. Entry complete, you finally allow yourself to lie upon your sleeping mat. Through the small window, you can see the sky now fully illuminated by the morning sun, the same sky that revealed such different aspects during your night's work. As consciousness begins to fade, replaced by the vivid imagery that precedes true sleep, you find yourself contemplating the curious symmetry of your existence. While others dream of the heavens from their beds, you observe the heavens and then dream of them afterward. Your unconscious mind continuing the work your conscious one has set aside until darkness returns. Your last coherent thought before sleep claims you completely is a recognition of the profound privilege of your calling, to be among those who keep watch when others sleep, recording the movements of distant worlds for the expansion of human understanding. The techniques of wakefulness you've mastered are not merely practical tools, but the means by which humanity extends its collective consciousness beyond natural limitations, reaching toward knowledge that would otherwise remain beyond grasp. This moment fades softly now. Let's continue on, deeper into the past. Time flows backward like the Nile returning to its source, carrying us to marble halls where lamplight dances on papyrus and parchment. Here, in the greatest library the ancient world has known, knowledge is guarded not by locks and walls alone, but by the vigilance of those who understand its true value. You are Theon of Alexandria, assistant librarian in the Great Library, keeper of scrolls and tablet catalogues in the mathematics and astronomical section. The year is 357 CE, and though the library is no longer at its zenith of glory, it remains the greatest repository of knowledge in the Mediterranean world. Outside, the night air carries the mingled scents of the sea, burning oil lamps, and the exotic spices that flow through Alexandria's bustling port. Tonight, you have been assigned to the Night Watch, a rotating duty among the library's scholars, to ensure that someone remains alert and vigilant through the darkest hours when fire, theft, or damage pose their greatest threats to the irreplaceable collections. But your watch serves another purpose as well. With the library quiet and free from the day's constant interruptions, you have the rare opportunity to pursue your own studies undisturbed. The hour is late, approaching what the Romans call the third watch. You sit at a reading table in the central hall, where oil lamps suspended from bronze chains cast pools of golden light across the polished marble floor. Before you lies an unrolled papyrus containing Archimedes' treatise on the sphere and cylinder, a text you've been attempting to fully comprehend for months, working through each geometric proof with meticulous attention. Your eyes burn from hours of reading the densely packed Greek text. Your back aches from maintaining your hunched position over the scroll. Worst of all, your mind has begun to wander, unable to maintain focus on the complex mathematical relationships described in Archimedes' precise language. Sleep calls to you with increasing insistence. From a small leather pouch at your belt, you withdraw a handful of dried leaves, Alexandrian laurel mixed with mint and a touch of imported pepper. Following the practice you learned from your predecessor in the Night Watch, you crush a few leaves between your fingers and inhale the sharp aromatic scent. The effect is immediate, a momentary clearing of mental fog, a temporary respite from the heaviness of fatigue. But experience has taught you that botanical aids alone are insufficient for maintaining alertness through an entire night. Rising from your chair, you begin the series of movements formalized by generations of Alexandrian librarians before you. The Vigil of Thoth, named for the ibis-headed god of knowledge. You begin by standing straight, arms at your sides, breathing deeply and regularly. Then, raising your arms slowly overhead, you rise onto the balls of your feet, stretching your entire body upward as if reaching for the stars. Next comes a careful bending forward, touching the floor with your palms while keeping your legs straight, A series of controlled twists follows, then balancing on each foot in turn, while holding positions reminiscent of the sacred ibis. The movements are designed not merely to combat physical stiffness, but to reawaken mental acuity through precise control of the body. As you complete the sequence, you feel blood flowing more vigorously through your limbs and clarity returning to your thoughts. The exercise has served its purpose for countless night scholars before you. It does not fail you now. Returning to your table, you employ another traditional technique. Instead of continuing to read silently, you begin to voice the text aloud, though barely above a whisper. The physical act of articulation engages different aspects of your mind, creating new pathways for understanding. The sound of words in the vast, empty hall, even spoken so softly, helps anchor your attention to the present moment, rather than drifting toward dreams. As you speak Archimedes' words, giving voice to his insights across the span of centuries, you hear quiet footsteps. Approaching, Apollonia, another assistant librarian responsible for the philosophy section, emerges from between the tall shelves. "I thought I might find you still awake," she says, her voice hushed in deference to the sleeping library. "The hour grows late. Perhaps it is time for the scholarly dialogue." You nod gratefully. This is another ancient practice of the night watch, the pairing of scholars who take turns challenging each other with questions and explanations. By becoming both teacher and student in alternating measures, the mind is kept engaged through the difficult middle hours of the night when solitary study often falters. Apollonia pulls a chair to your table and glances at the unrolled papyrus. Archimedes again. You pursue his thoughts with remarkable dedication. "His methods contain insights beyond the obvious," you reply. "I believe he understood principles of infinity and limits that he never stated explicitly." She nods thoughtfully. "Then explain to me his approach to calculating the value of pi. Not the result, but his method of thinking. The challenge is perfectly chosen. To explain requires you to organize your understanding in new ways, to find clarity in concepts you've been struggling to fully grasp. As you begin articulating Archimedes' approach of inscribed and circumscribed polygons, using increasingly many sides to approximate the circle's area, you find your own comprehension deepening through the act of explanation. Apollonia listens attentively, occasionally interrupting with precise questions that force you to refine your thinking. After you've exhausted your understanding of Archimedes' method, she reciprocates by choosing a scroll from her own section, a copy of Plotinus's treatise on the nature of the soul. "Now it is your turn to question while I explain," she says, unrolling the text with practiced care. You formulate questions about Plotinus's conception of emanation and his intellectual relationship to Plato, topics far removed from your mathematical focus. This diversity is intentional. The night scholars of Alexandria have long observed that engaging with unfamiliar subjects prevents the mind from settling into comfortable patterns that might lead to drowsiness. The dialogue continues for perhaps an hour, each of you alternating between questioning and explaining. When you eventually notice Apollonia stifling a yawn, you both recognize it is time for the next method of maintaining alertness. "Shall we make our rounds?" you suggest, carefully rolling the Archimedes scroll and securing it with its ribbon. Physical patrol of the library serves multiple purposes, checking for any signs of trouble while also providing movement to reinvigorate tired bodies. Together, you walk the vast perimeter of the main hall, oil lamp in hand, examining locks on the doors ensuring no water has leaked through the roof during the earlier rain, and verifying that all is secure. As you walk, Apollonia produces a small ceramic flask. "My uncle sent this from his travels in Arabia," she explains, removing the stopper. "They claim it helps the desert caravans maintain vigilance during night journeys. The liquid inside is dark and aromatic, bitter, but not unpleasant. You take a small sip as offered, finding it unlike anything you've tasted before, reminiscent of certain medicines, but with an underlying sweetness. Almost immediately, you feel a new clarity spreading through your mind, pushing back the fog of fatigue that had been gathering once again. Remarkable, you murmur. What do they call this preparation? Kawa, Apollonia replies. Made from berries that grow in high mountains far to the south. The traders are quite secretive about its source. Your patrol continues, taking you through narrow aisles between high shelves laden with scrolls from every corner of the known world. In one remote alcove, you pause to light additional lamps. Darkness is the great enemy of vigilance, and the library's protocol demands abundant illumination in whatever section the night scholars occupy. By now, the deepest part of night has arrived. Outside, even Alexandria's notorious nightlife has quieted, leaving only the occasional call of the city watch or the distant cry of a bird. This is the most dangerous time, what the Egyptian scholars of old called the hour when the car wanders, when the spirit naturally seeks to leave the body in preparation for dreams. Recognizing the signs in each other's increasingly slow movements and slightly unfocused gazes, you and Apollonia implement the most social of the librarian's techniques for maintaining alertness, the contest of knowledge. Returning to the central table, now illuminated by additional lamps, you face each other across its polished surface. By tradition, the younger scholar, you in this case, poses the first challenge. Name the 7 greatest physicians from the founding of this library, their contributions, and the locations where their works are catalogued, you say, selecting a topic distant from Apollonia's philosophical expertise, but well within the expected knowledge of any Alexandrian librarian. She straightens her posture, the competitive challenge immediately sharpening her attention. One by one, she names the physicians, Hippocrates, Herophilus, Erasistratus, and others, detailing their major works and correctly identifying their locations within the library's organizational system. When she finishes, a smile of satisfaction plays across her lips. "My turn," she says. "Recite from memory the first 20 propositions of Euclid's Elements and identify which ones depend upon the parallel postulate." The contest continues through increasingly difficult challenges, each designed to require active recall rather than passive recognition. The competitive element provides motivation, while the need to access deeply stored knowledge forces your mind into heightened activity. By the time you complete several rounds, both of you are fully alert again, energized by the intellectual engagement. As the contest concludes, you notice the first subtle change in the quality of darkness visible through the high windows. Dawn approaches, though still hours away. It is time for the most sacred of the night scholars' practices, the recording of insights. From a locked cabinet, you retrieve fresh papyrus, ink, and reed pens. The final duty of the night watch is to document any new understanding gained during the hours of study. This practice serves practical purposes, preserving thoughts that might otherwise be lost to fatigue or forgetting, but also embodies the librarian's fundamental mission of expanding and transmitting knowledge. You begin writing, your pen moving, deliberately across the papyrus. After hours spent with Archimedes' text, You've developed a new interpretation of his method for approximating curved surfaces. The act of writing forces you to organize these nascent thoughts into coherent form, requiring a final push of mental clarity before your watch concludes. Beside you, Apollonia does the same, her pen scratching softly as she records connections between Plotinus and earlier Pythagorean concepts. The parallel activity creates a gentle atmosphere of shared purpose. Two minds working independently but in harmony, each contributing to the library's ever-growing treasury of human thought. As you complete your writing, carefully dusting the papyrus with fine sand to dry the ink, you hear the first stirrings of the morning staff arriving. The night watch is nearly complete. Before relinquishing your duty, however, one final ritual remains. Together, you and Apollonia approach the small shrine at the eastern end of the main hall, a simple altar dedicated to Thoth and his Greek counterpart Hermes, patrons of knowledge and learning. Here, you light fresh incense and recite the traditional prayer of the night scholars. As watchful as the ibis, as tireless as the moon's journey, we have kept faith with knowledge through the dark hours. May our vigilance honor those who preserved wisdom before us and serve those who will seek it after. The ritual completes, you extinguish the extra lamps and prepare to brief the day librarian on any matters requiring attention. As you describe the night's events, unremarkable in terms of security, but fruitful in terms of scholarship, you feel the familiar mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction that follows a successful night watch. Before departing for your quarters and much needed rest, you pause in the library's colonnade. The first pale light of dawn now illuminates Alexandria's famous lighthouse in the distance, its beam fading into irrelevance against the greater radiance of approaching day. Apollonia joins you for a moment, both of you breathing deeply of the fresh morning air that carries the scent of the sea. Until the next watch rotation, she says, the traditional farewell among the night scholars. Until then, you reply, knowing that in approximately 20 days, the duty will cycle back to you. Another night of battling natural rhythms in service to knowledge. Another opportunity to employ the ancient techniques that have kept Alexandria's librarians vigilant through countless nights since the library's founding centuries ago. As you make your way through streets now beginning to stir with bakers, fishermen, and early merchants, you reflect on the continuity of your role. One link in an unbroken chain of scholarly vigilance stretching back through generations. The techniques you've employed tonight, the herbal aids, the physical movements, the social engagement, the competitive recall, represent the accumulated wisdom of countless previous watchers, each contributing some refinement to the practices that enable human minds to extend their conscious work beyond natural limitations. In your quarters, preparing for sleep as others prepare for activity, you experience the curious inversion that defines the night scholar's existence. This stepping outside the ordinary rhythms of human life in pursuit of knowledge that might otherwise remain inaccessible. Your last thought before sleep claims you is of the scrolls waiting in the library, of the countless ideas preserved through centuries of careful watching, of the fragility of human knowledge and the quiet heroism of those who guard it through the vulnerable hours of darkness. Thank you for spending this quiet time with us, drifting through forgotten echoes of history. If this story brought you peace, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs rest. We'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Until next time, sleep well, dream softly, and good night. Through the mists of memory and across the vast tapestry of time, you drift into the fragrant gardens of Moorish Spain, where knowledge blooms beside orange trees and the quiet scratch of reed pens marks the passing hours of scholarly devotion. You arrive in Cordoba as the last light of day filters through carved wooden lattices. The city gleams golden against the darkening sky, a beacon of learning in a world where knowledge is preserved letter by letter, in careful strokes of ink upon parchment. Tonight, you are a young scholar in the great caliphate of Al-Andalus, where the wisdom of ancient Greece mingles with the mathematics of Arab philosophers and the poetry of the desert. Your sandaled feet make little sound as you climb the narrow staircase to the upper chamber where you study. The evening call to prayer has just ended, its melodic tones fading into the gathering dusk. You have been granted a rare privilege, access to a precious manuscript of Ibn Sina, known to some as Avicenna, whose medical writings have travelled from distant Persia to this westernmost reach of the Islamic world. The manuscript has been lent to your teacher for merely 7 days, and as his most promising pupil, you have been entrusted to make a faithful copy before it must be returned. The small room is modest but comfortable. A low wooden desk faces the window where, during daylight hours, the sun provides illumination for your work. Now, however, your tasks must continue by candlelight. You arrange 3 beeswax candles in brass holders, positioning them carefully to cast light without throwing your own shadow across the precious pages. The golden flames flicker to life as you strike flint and steel, filling the chamber with a warm glow and the subtle, sweet scent of good beeswax. The rhythm of your preparations is familiar and comforting. You unroll your bundle of reed pens, each cut to different thicknesses for varying styles of script. Your knife for trimming their points rests beside a smooth stone used for sharpening. A pot of black ink made from oak galls sits ready, and beside it, a smaller vessel containing precious vermilion for important headings. The red pigment has been mixed with gum arabic to give it proper flow from the pen, a technique you learned from your teacher, who learned it from his teacher in an unbroken chain reaching back centuries. But the night ahead will be long, and you have made preparations to keep your mind clear and your eyes from growing heavy with sleep. From a small cloth pouch, you withdraw a handful of dried bitter herbs that the physician Abu al-Qasim recommended for students facing long vigils with their books. You place some of these leaves in a small ceramic cup and pour hot water from the kettle kept warm on a tiny brazier in the corner of the room. The steam rises with an astringent aroma that already begins to clear your thoughts. You arrange your workspace with practiced precision. The original manuscript will lie on the left side of your desk, weighted with small leather pouches filled with sand. Your blank pages, carefully prepared sheepskin parchment that took weeks to properly clean, stretch, and polish smooth with pumice, are positioned on the right. Each sheet is precious, representing the value of several days' wages. A mistake would be costly, both in materials and in your standing with your teacher. Before beginning, you reach for a small wooden box containing your most effective aid for the night's scholarly vigil. Dates stuffed with walnuts and drizzled with honey. An elderly scholar from Damascus once shared this secret with your teacher, that the combination of sweet fruit and nuts provides sustenance that releases its energy slowly through the night, keeping the mind alert without the sudden rise and fall that comes from sweets alone. You place 3 of these carefully prepared treats on a small copper plate, promising yourself 1 at each significant milestone in your evening's work. As you settle onto your cushion, you adjust your loose woolen robe against the night's coolness. The stone walls of the chamber hold the day's heat for a time, but will grow chill as midnight approaches. Beside you, a small clay cup holds water infused with mint leaves. another trick to refresh your senses when concentration begins to falter. The first page of Ibn Sina's text lies before you, adorned with intricate geometric designs in blue, red, and gold leaf. You will not attempt to reproduce these illuminations. That is the work of specialized artists. But the text itself must be copied with absolute fidelity. Your teacher has warned that medical knowledge incorrectly transcribed could one day cost a life rather than save it. You begin by reciting the Bismillah in a whisper, then dip your finest pen into the ink. The first letter forms perfectly beneath your hand, and you feel a quiet satisfaction. Each character in Arabic script has its own beauty, its own balance. When written well, the text itself becomes a form of devotion, a meditation in ink that honors both the knowledge it contains and the divine source from which all wisdom flows. The city grows quieter as you work. Through the small window, you can see stars appearing in the velvet sky. Your hand moves steadily across the parchment, forming the elegant curves and dots of the Arabic script. Ibn Sina's discourse on fevers and their treatments unfolds beneath your pen. You note his careful distinctions between different types of fevers, those that come with the change of seasons, those that accompany specific ailments, those that signal deeper imbalances in the body's four humors. After completing the first page, you pause to inspect your work, holding it at different angles to ensure the ink has proper consistency and that no character is malformed. Satisfied, you reach for the first date, biting into its sweet flesh and feeling the contrast of the walnut's slight bitterness. The honey touches your tongue last, a reward that spreads warmth through your body. You take a small sip of your mint water to cleanse your fingers and mouth before returning to the precious manuscript. As the night deepens, the sounds of the city fade entirely. Now there is only the gentle scratch of your pen, the occasional soft pop from the candle wicks, and your own measured breathing. Time seems to slow and expand in these quiet hours. You find yourself entering a state of deep concentration where each letter, each diacritical mark, exists in perfect clarity before you transfer it to parchment. When you reach the section on treatments involving herbs from distant India, you notice your eyes beginning to grow heavy. It is time for another remedy. From a different pouch, you take dried leaves of what your people call cat, a plant that shepherds chew to remain alert during long nights watching their flocks. You place a small amount between your cheek and gum as you were taught, and wait for its subtle effect to take hold. Within minutes, your mind regains its sharpness, and the words of Ibn Sina come back into focus. The candles have burned lower, and you carefully replace one that has nearly exhausted itself. The fresh light brightens the room momentarily, and you stretch your fingers, rolling your shoulders to release the tension that has built there. On the small brazier, you place another small piece of charcoal and sprinkle it with ground frankincense, an extravagance perhaps, but the gentle fragrance will keep your senses engaged through the middle hours of the night when the body most craves sleep. You have reached the manuscript's discussion of the heart and its functions, a section where Ibn Sina made observations more accurate than any who came before him. Your respect for the Persian master grows with each passage. Though separated by vast distances and many decades, you feel a connection to this brilliant mind, whose words flow through your pen onto fresh parchment. The second date disappears between your teeth, just as the muezzin's distant call marks the middle of the night. Has so much time passed already? You look at your progress, nearly halfway through the text, each page a testament to your care and attention. Your teacher will be pleased, but more importantly, This knowledge will remain accessible for generations to come. Perhaps someday, centuries from now, another scholar will read these very words you are preserving tonight. To ward off the deepening cold, you wrap a woolen shawl around your shoulders. From a small flask, you pour a finger's width of strong black coffee, a beverage still rare and precious in Al-Andalus, brought by merchants who speak of its popularity in distant Arabia and Ethiopia. The bitter liquid has remarkable properties for extending wakefulness, though your teacher warns against depending on it too heavily, as it can cause the hand to tremble if consumed in excess. You sip it slowly, savoring both the unusual taste and the alertness that spreads through your limbs. Your pen returns to the parchment. Ibn Sina now discusses the treatments of melancholy and disorders of the mind. You find yourself particularly interested in his observations about how certain scents and music can alter a person's temperament and mental state. As if in acknowledgement of this wisdom, you add a drop of rose oil to the water in a small clay dish near your candles. The subtle fragrance fills the air, refreshing your senses. The night deepens further. In these hours when most souls sleep, you feel a curious connection to scholars who have kept similar vigils throughout the ages. In Alexandria, in Baghdad, in Damascus, countless others have sat as you do now, by the light of oil lamps or candles, preserving and extending human knowledge, page by precious page. There is something sacred in this quiet work, this passing of wisdom from one generation to the next, through the patient motion of hand and pen. When your back begins to ache from bending over the manuscript, you rise and perform a series of stretches taught to you by an aging scribe who had maintained his craft well into his 70th year. The mind cannot stay sharp if the body grows too stiff, he had advised, demonstrating how to extend the arms overhead, then bend slowly from side to side, releasing tension in the spine. You follow this routine now, feeling blood flow return to cramped muscles. Outside your window, the night sky has wheeled slowly around its axis. Stars that were rising when you began are now setting toward the western horizon. The deepest part of night, what your Christian neighbors call the wolf's hour, has arrived. This is when weariness presses most heavily on your eyelids. You reach for another remedy from your collection. From a small glass vial, you release 3 drops of an aromatic oil distilled from the bitter orange trees that grow in the caliph's gardens. You rub this between your palms, then bring them to your face, inhaling deeply. The sharp, clean scent cuts through fatigue like a newly wetted blade through silk. You also massage a drop at each temple, where the coolness seems to penetrate directly into your thoughts, clearing away the fog of exhaustion. Your attention returns to Ibn Sina's text. You have reached his discussion of surgical techniques, procedures requiring steady hands and clear understanding. You copy his words with particular care, knowing that one day a physician might rely on this very transcription when preparing to save a life. The responsibility weighs on you, but it is a weight that keeps you focused, that gives purpose to your midnight vigil. When you find yourself reading the same line twice, you know it is time for the last date. As you chew the sweet fruit and crunchy walnut, you also perform another ritual to maintain alertness. You dampen a small cloth with cool water and press it against the back of your neck, then to your forehead and eyelids. The momentary shock of coolness reawakens your senses. From a small bundle of dried herbs, you select several stems of rosemary, crushing them between your fingers and inhaling their resinous fragrance. Your teacher, who studied briefly in Sicily, told you that Greek scholars believed this herb strengthened memory and cleared thought, whether by its true properties or merely through its stimulating scent, you find your mind regaining clarity. The final third of the manuscript contains Ibn Sina's most complex theories about the relationship between the body's systems. The text here is dense, the concepts requiring careful consideration before you transfer them to your copy. You occasionally pause, pen hovering above the inkpot, to ensure you fully grasp the meaning before committing it to parchment. As you work, you become aware of subtle changes in the quality of darkness beyond your window. Night is not a constant state, but has its own rhythms and variations. The deepest darkness has passed. Though dawn remains hours away, there is an ineffable shift in the air, a presaging of morning that scholars throughout time have sensed during their nocturnal labors. To honor this transition and revive your concentration, you perform another ritual. From a small pouch, you take a handful of cardamom seeds, placing one in your mouth and crushing it gently between your teeth. The intense, bright flavor spreads across your tongue, a small sensory awakening that enlivens your thoughts. You adjust the candles once more, ensuring the light falls perfectly on your work. The manuscript's final pages contain Ibn Sina's reflections on longevity and the preservation of health into old age. There is wisdom here that applies to your current task. He writes of moderation, of alternating between periods of intense focus and necessary rest. Even as you work through the night, you recognize the importance of the short breaks you've taken to stretch, to refresh your senses with scents and tastes, to maintain balance between effort and recovery. In the stillness, your pen continues its dance across parchment. The regularity of this motion becomes almost meditative, each character flowing from the previous one, each line connecting to the next. The physical act of writing has become an extension of your concentration, a focusing of mind and body on a single worthy purpose. From the streets far below comes the first stirring of the city's awakening. A baker's apprentice passes with a wooden cart, its wheels creating a gentle rhythm on the cobblestones. Soon others will join him, water carriers, merchants preparing their stalls, craftsmen opening their workshops. But for now, the world still belongs primarily to those who keep vigil through the night. You realize you are nearing completion of your task. Only a few pages remain to be copied. A quiet satisfaction spreads through you, tempering the fatigue that has accumulated despite your various remedies. You have maintained both speed and accuracy, fulfilling the trust placed in you by your teacher, and in a larger sense, by the unbroken chain of scholarship that connects you to Ibn Sina himself. For these final pages, you prepare yourself with particular care. You wash your hands in a small basin of water infused with lemon, dry them thoroughly on a clean cloth, and select your finest pen. These concluding passages deserve your best effort, your clearest mind. You take several deep breaths, centering yourself in the moment. As you form the final lines of text, you are conscious of participating in something greater than yourself. Knowledge preserved is a bridge across time, connecting minds separated by centuries. Your night's labor ensures that Ibn Sina's insights will not be lost, but will continue to heal and teach long after both author and copyist have returned to dust. The last sentence flows from your pen. You write the traditional closing phrase, "And Allah knows best." Setting your pen aside, you carefully sprinkle fine sand across the page to absorb excess ink, then gently tip it away. You examine your work in the candlelight, noting with quiet pride that the final page matches the first in quality and care. Outside, the first hint of dawn lightens the eastern sky. Birds begin their morning songs, hesitant at first. Then, with growing confidence, you gather your completed pages, aligning them carefully and placing a smooth wooden board atop them to keep them flat as the ink fully dries. The original manuscript is rewrapped in its protective silk cloth. Your body now acknowledges the night's exertion. Your eyes burn slightly, your back aches, your fingers are stained with ink despite your care. But alongside this physical weariness is a deeper satisfaction. The knowledge of work well done, of purpose fulfilled, of contributing your small part to the preservation of human understanding. You extinguish the candles one by one, watching as thin ribbons of smoke rise toward the ceiling. The room that has been your entire world through the night's watches now seems smaller, more ordinary in the growing light. You move to the window and look out over the awakening city of Cordoba, its whitewashed buildings taking on a rosy hue in the day's first light. Later, you will present your completed work to your teacher. He will examine it closely, comparing key passages to the original, noting your fidelity to the text. If he finds it worthy, and you believe he will, your copy will join others in the city's growing library of medical knowledge, available to students and physicians seeking to understand the human body and its ailments. But for now, you offer a silent prayer of thanks for the knowledge you have helped preserve, for the remedies that sustained your vigil, for belonging to this ancient tradition of scholars who pass light through darkness, not just of the night, but of human ignorance. As the sun's first direct rays touch the city's minarets, you gather your materials and prepare to seek your well-earned rest, knowing that tonight's labor has woven your own thread into the vast tapestry of human learning. The herbs and fruits that sustained your night's work, bitter cut and sweet dates, aromatic cardamom and rosemary, stimulating coffee and orange oil, are more than mere aids to wakefulness. They represent the accumulated wisdom of countless scholars before you who discovered that the natural world offers remedies for the body's limitations. This too is knowledge worth preserving, these small secrets that allow the mind to extend its reach beyond ordinary constraints. As you descend the narrow staircase, manuscript safely secured in its leather case, you pass another student ascending to begin his day's work. You exchange nods of recognition. He fresh and alert. You are worn, but accomplished. In this brief moment of passing is symbolized the continuous nature of scholarship. As one completes their labor, another begins, knowledge flowing like a river through countless hands across the centuries. This part of your dream has ended, but your journey through history continues. Light filters through stained glass windows, casting jewel-toned shadows across ancient parchments. The hushed whispers of scholars long departed still echo in these hallowed halls, where time itself seems suspended in amber. Step now into the world of Byzantine monks, where every word preserved is an act of devotion. You step into the scriptorium as the deep blue twilight settles over the monastery. The air carries the distinct scent of beeswax candles, their warm glow creating halos of amber light that pool around each wooden desk. This evening marks your third year as a novice copyist at the monastery of Pantocrator in Constantinople, and tonight you've been entrusted with a task of profound importance: the copy of an ancient Greek philosophical text that has survived since the time of Aristotle himself. The weight of responsibility settles on your shoulders as you take your place at the oak desk, worn smooth by generations of scholars before you. Your fingers trace the grain of the wood, feeling the subtle, indentations where countless elbows have rested during night vigils stretching back 2 centuries. Brother Nikephoros, the elderly monk who oversees the scriptorium, moves silently between the desks, his sandaled feet barely audible against the stone floor. "Remember," he whispers, his breath carrying the faint aroma of the honey-sweetened tisane that sustains him through these long nights. Every letter is a prayer, every word an offering to God and posterity. His gnarled hand places the precious original text beside your blank parchment. The leather binding creaks softly as he opens it to reveal pages inscribed with faded brown ink, the handwriting tight and precise despite its age. You feel the night settling in around the monastery walls, the sacred quiet that comes when most brothers have retired to their cells. In the scriptorium, however, a special contingent of monks remains, the night copyists, guardians of knowledge who work when others sleep. The sound of parchment rustling gently fills the room, punctuated by the occasional scrape of a knife resharpening a quill. Before beginning your work, you reach for the small ceramic bowl at the corner of your desk and pour a measured amount of ground coffee beans, a luxury available only to those entrusted with nighttime scholarly duties. The bitter brew is a recent addition to the monastery, brought by traders from distant Arabia. Brother Theophilus had initially condemned it as a heathen drink, until he discovered its remarkable ability to sharpen the mind and ward off sleep. You mix the ground coffee with hot water from the copper kettle that sits atop a small brazier nearby. The steam rises, carrying an earthy aroma that already begins to clear the fog of fatigue from your mind. The taste is bitter but pleasingly complex, and you feel a subtle alertness spreading through your limbs as you take your first sips. Beside you, Brother Cyril is preparing his own vigilance ritual. From a small box lined with silk, he retrieves several dried leaves of peppermint. You watch as he crushes them between his fingers, releasing their sharp, clean scent into the air before steeping them in hot water. "For clarity of thought," he murmurs, catching your glance. The ancients believed Persephone brought this herb from the underworld, that it might keep men's minds in the realm of the living, even as their bodies grow weary. The scriptorium settles into its nighttime rhythm, as each monk employs his preferred method for maintaining alertness. Some, like the elderly brother Eugenius, rely on small pieces of dried apple dipped in vinegar, the tartness shocking enough to jolt one back from the edges of slumber. Others keep small vials of rosemary oil, occasionally dabbing a drop behind their ears or inhaling directly from the container when concentration begins to waver. You turn your attention to the materials before you. The parchment, made from calf skin that has been soaked, limed, scraped and stretched, lies pristine and expectant. Your quills, 5 of them, meticulously cut from goose feathers that morning, stand ready in a ceramic holder. The inkpot contains your own carefully mixed formula: oak gall, gum arabic, and iron sulfate, prepared according to a recipe handed down through generations of Byzantine scholars. Taking up your favorite quill, you test its point against your thumbnail, feeling the slight resistance that signals perfect sharpness. The first task is to prepare the page with guidelines, ensuring that your text will be straight and evenly spaced. With a thin lead stylus, you mark the margins and line spacings, pressing just firmly enough to leave faint impressions that will guide your writing but disappear in the finished work. As the hour grows later, you begin to feel the first tendrils of fatigue winding around your consciousness. This is the dangerous time when mistakes are most likely to occur. The monastery has developed numerous strategies to combat this moment, passed down through centuries of nocturnal scholarship. You reach for a small ceramic pot sealed with wax. Inside is a paste made from honey, walnuts, and a secret blend of spices that Brother Nikephoros prepares each week. Placing a small amount on your tongue, you let the mixture dissolve slowly. The sweetness comes first, then the complex interplay of cinnamon, cardamom, and other spices you cannot identify. The monks call this wisdom's wake, and its stimulating properties have saved countless manuscripts from errors born of exhaustion. The night deepens. Outside, an owl calls, its voice carrying clearly through the high windows of the scriptorium. The sound reminds you of the world beyond these walls, a world often plunged into ignorance and warfare, a world that makes the preservation of these texts all the more vital. Each completed manuscript is a bulwark against the darkness of forgetting. Brother Nikephoros moves between the desks again, this time carrying a silver tray. On it rest small cups of diluted wine infused with saffron, another aid to vigilance reserved for the most difficult hours of the night. The body grows heavy, he says softly as he places a cup beside your work, but the spirit must remain light. You sip the wine slowly, feeling the warmth spread through your chest, bringing with it a renewed clarity. The text before you contains complex philosophical arguments about the nature of existence. Concentrating deeply, you sound out each Greek word in your mind before transcribing it, careful not to lose the thread of meaning. Your brush with sleepiness has passed, but you know from experience that it will return. The battle against fatigue is not won once, but many times throughout the night. In the corner of the scriptorium, the water clock marks the passing hours with soft, regular drops. Each splash into the copper basin below serves as a gentle reminder of time's passage. 4 hours have elapsed since evening prayers, meaning midnight has come and gone. This is the hour that the Desert Fathers called the doorway, when the veil between consciousness and dreams grows thinnest. Brother Methodius, whose desk faces yours, has developed his own technique for maintaining alertness during this perilous time. Every quarter hour, he stands and performs a series of subtle movements, extending his arms, rolling his shoulders, flexing his fingers. These exercises, adapted from practices he observed during his pilgrimage to monasteries in the Egyptian desert, keep the blood flowing and the mind engaged. You've adopted some of these movements yourself, finding them particularly effective when combined with controlled breathing. As you complete another page of careful transcription, Brother Nikephoros appears at your side, examining your work with eyes that have assessed thousands of manuscript pages over his lifetime. "Good," he murmurs, his voice barely audible above the scratch of quills across parchment. Your hand grows more confident, but remember to maintain the sacred proportion in your lettering. He demonstrates with his own quill on a scrap of parchment, showing how the height of each letter should relate to its width according to principles dating back to classical times. The night progresses and the candles burn lower. An acolyte moves silently through the scriptorium, trimming wicks and replacing candles that have burned too low. The quality of light is essential. Too dim, and errors creep in. Too harsh, and the eyes grow strained and weary. The monastery's beekeeper, Brother Alexander, creates special candles for the scriptorium, adding small amounts of aromatic resins that both improve the quality of light and release subtle scents that promote alertness. Your stomach growls softly, reminding you of the physical demands of this mental labor. From beneath your desk, you retrieve a small cloth bundle containing dried figs and almond paste, sustenance approved for consumption during night work. Unlike heavy foods that induce drowsiness, These provide steady energy without dulling the child mind. You chew slowly, savoring the natural sweetness while continuing to scan the text before you. As you work, your mind occasionally wanders to the story of Brother Theodosius, a legendary figure in the monastery's history. It is said that he once worked for 3 days and nights without rest to complete the copy of a rare mathematical treatise, before the original, borrowed from a visiting scholar, had to be returned. When asked how he had maintained his concentration for so long, he reportedly replied, "I dissolved the boundary between myself and the text until I was no longer copying words but allowing them to flow through me." While few aspire to such extremes, his dedication serves as inspiration during particularly challenging passages. The moon has moved across the night sky, its light now streaming through the eastern windows of the scriptorium. Its cool luminescence mingles with the warm candlelight, creating pools of varied brightness across the room. Some of the elder monks believe that different types of texts should be copied under different light: historical works under sunlight for clarity, theological works under candlelight for divine inspiration, and poetical or mathematical works under moonlight for creativity and precision. Another wave of fatigue washes over you, this one stronger than before. You recognize the dangerous moment when the mind begins to play tricks, when letters seem to dance on the page and concentration fragments like light through a prism. Brother Nikephoros has taught all novices to recognize this state and has provided remedies. From a small pouch at your belt, you remove a piece of rock crystal, clear quartz that has been blessed during the Feast of Epiphany. Holding it between your thumb and forefinger, you focus on its clarity, using it as an anchor for your wandering attention. The monks believe that certain stones contain properties that can influence the body's humors. Clear quartz is said to balance excess black bile, the humor associated with melancholy and fatigue. Across the room, Brother Gerasimos employs a different method. At regular intervals, he applies small amounts of rosemary-infused oil to his temples and wrists. The sharp, herbaceous scent cuts through mental fog like a knife. You can detect it even from your desk, and the clarity it brings spreads beyond just Gerasimos himself. You return to your transcription with renewed focus, carefully forming each letter with deliberate precision. The text discusses Aristotle's concepts of potentiality and actuality, complex ideas that require your complete understanding to transcribe accurately. Any error in copying could propagate misconceptions for centuries to come, a responsibility that weighs heavily on every monk in the scriptorium. The water clock continues its measured dripping, and you realize that the deepest part of night has arrived. This is the time the Desert Fathers called the wolf hours, when the body's vitality reaches its lowest ebb. Brother Nikephoros rises from his supervisory desk and signals for the ritual that has sustained the night scribes of Pantocrator. For generations, the monks set down their quills and rise, forming a circle in the center of the scriptorium. In hushed voices, they begin to chant a psalm specifically chosen for the night watch. My eyes stay open through the watches of the night, that I may meditate on your promises. The harmonic resonance of their voices fills the chamber, vibrating in perfect acoustics designed by Byzantine architects who understood the physics of sound. You join the chant, feeling the vibrations in your chest cavity as your voice blends with the others. The physical act of singing changes your breathing pattern, increasing oxygen flow to your brain. The familiar words require no conscious thought, allowing your mind to rest while remaining active. After 3 psalms, you return to your desk. With renewed energy, your fatigue temporarily banished by this communal ritual. Brother Nikephoros now brings forth a special aid reserved for the most challenging hours. A small ceramic container of an unusual paste. From the far eastern lands, he explains as he places a tiny portion on the back of your hand. Traders brought it from a kingdom called Cathay, where scholars have used it for millennia. The paste is made from the leaves of a plant called tea, ground with aromatic spices and honey into a thick consistency. When dissolved on the tongue, it produces an alertness more refined and sustained than coffee, without the latter's tendency to cause trembling hands, a disastrous side effect. For delicate manuscript work, the taste is unlike anything in your experience. Earthy yet floral, bitter yet complex. As it works its way into your system, you feel your mind becoming clearer, sharper, as though a veil has been lifted. The monastery carefully guards its small supply of this precious substance, using it sparingly, and only for the most important, copying tasks. With this renewed clarity, you tackle a particularly difficult section of the text, a passage where the original has been damaged, requiring careful interpretation of partially visible letters. Brother Nikephoros watches over your shoulder as you work through the puzzle, occasionally offering guidance. See how the ink has faded here? He points with a slender finger. But observe the impression left on the parchment by the original. Scribe's quill. One can almost read the ghost of his writing. You learn to see these shadowy impressions, to interpret them based on context, and your growing knowledge of Greek philosophical terminology. This skill, reading what is barely there, is among the most valued in the scriptorium, preserving thoughts that might otherwise slip away into oblivion. Outside, the first birds begin their pre-dawn chorus, though night still holds firm. Their distant calls remind you that the world continues its rhythms regardless of your scholarly labours. There is something comforting in this continuity, in knowing that the same birds sang for Aristotle as he composed the very words you now copy. The scriptorium has its own subtle soundtrack. The soft scratch of quills, the occasional cough quickly stifled, the rustle of parchment, the gentle pop and hiss of candle flames. These sounds form a meditative backdrop to your work, almost hypnotic in their regularity. You've learned to notice when this ambient pattern changes, as it often signals someone struggling with fatigue. Brother Cyril at the desk beside you has developed a particularly effective system for maintaining focus through the night. At the completion of each page, he rewards himself with 3 deep breaths and a small sip of water infused with crushed mint leaves. This regular pattern of work and reward creates momentum that carries him through difficult passages. You've adopted a similar habit, marking your progress with small rituals that divide the night into manageable segments. The monastery bells sound for the midnight office, matins, their deep resonance felt as much as heard through the thick stone walls. Half the monks will leave their desks to attend this service, while the others continue working. You've been assigned to remain at your task tonight, but you pause briefly to cross yourself and whisper the opening lines of the office before returning to your manuscript. As you continue your careful transcription, you employ another technique, taught by Brother Nikephoros, engaging multiple senses to maintain alertness. While your eyes focus on the text and your hand forms the letters, you silently recite each word as you write it, creating a rhythm of understanding that flows from eye to mind, to mouth to hand. This full-circuit engagement keeps your concentration intact even as the hour grows impossibly late. The page before you is nearly complete when you notice an anomaly in the original text, a marginal note in a different hand from the main script. This is not unusual in ancient manuscripts. Scholars often added commentaries or corrections to texts as they studied them. You carefully reproduce this note, maintaining its position relative to the main text, preserving not just the original author's thoughts but the intellectual conversation that has evolved around them over centuries. Brother Nikephoros passes by again, this time carrying a tray with small cups of a steaming liquid that fills the scriptorium with a spicy aroma. Armenian pepper tea, he explains, placing a cup beside your work. The merchants claim it was favored by the scholars of Nalanda in distant India. The tea burns slightly on your tongue, its heat and peppery quality creating an immediate alertness that radiates from your core to your extremities. As you sip this unusual beverage, you watch the older monks at their tasks. Brother Theophilus, whose eyes have grown weak after 40 years of manuscript work, now uses a crystal lens to magnify the text before him. The lens, a marvel of Venetian craftsmanship, is mounted on a bronze stand that allows him to position it precisely over difficult passages. Despite his failing eyesight, his knowledge of Greek and Latin is so profound that he is trusted with the monastery's most precious texts. Your own eyes feel the strain of hours of focused attention. You recall the remedy taught during your first year, periodically focusing on distant objects to relieve the tension of close work. You raise your gaze to the arched windows high above, allowing your vision to relax as you trace the geometric patterns of the iron framework holding the glass panes. This momentary rest refreshes your sight, and when you return your attention to the manuscript, the letters appear crisp and clear once more. The night has grown so quiet that you can hear the soft breathing of the monks around you. In this profound silence, concentration deepens to a state the elders call luminous attention, a clarity of mind where fatigue is transcended and the work flows without conscious effort. You've experienced this state only fleetingly before, but tonight, perhaps due to the importance of the text before you, you feel yourself slipping into this rare form of awareness. Time seems to lose its linear quality in this state. You are aware of completing page after page, yet it feels less like sequential work and more like a continuous unfolding. The words of Aristotle flow from the ancient manuscript through your understanding and onto the fresh parchment. There is a harmony to this process that feels almost divine, as though you are participating in something greater than yourself, the great chain of knowledge preservation that stretches back to antiquity and forward to scholars yet unborn. Subtle change in the quality of light alerts you that dawn approaches, though it is still dark outside. The night candles are burning low, their flames more orange than yellow as they consume the last of their fuel. Brother Alexander moves quietly through the scriptorium again, this time replacing the night candles with fresh morning tapers, slightly brighter to ease the transition to daylight. Your body feels the change of hour even without windows to show the lightening sky. There's a subtle shift in temperature, a barely perceptible freshening of the air that heralds the new day. The most difficult hours have passed, and a second wind of energy comes with the psychological knowledge that you have successfully navigated the deepest part of night. You complete another page and pause to assess your progress. The stack of completed parchment to your right has grown impressively. 14 pages of careful transcription. Brother Nikephoros examines your work with a critical eye, nodding with approval at the consistency of your hand, even in the sections completed during the most challenging hours. You have learned to conquer the night, he says quietly, his voice carrying only to your ears. This is no small achievement. Many begin this work. Few develop the discipline to maintain quality through darkness. His words warm you more than any stimulating beverage. for praise from Brother Nikephoros is as rare as a cloudless day in winter. As the first pale light of dawn begins to filter through the eastern windows, the atmosphere in the scriptorium subtly shifts. The night's sacred silence gives way to gentle movement as monks stretch stiff limbs and exchange quiet observations about their progress. Those who attended the midnight office return, bringing with them news from other parts of the monastery and a fresh energy that helps dispel the last vestiges of night's heaviness. You carefully complete the final lines of the section assigned to you, forming each Greek character with the same attentiveness you brought to the first page many hours ago. The discipline of maintaining consistent quality, regardless of fatigue or hour, is perhaps the most valuable skill you've acquired in your years at Pantocrator. Brother Nikephoros often says, "A manuscript reveals its creator's character as clearly as a mirror shows a face. Let yours reflect steadfastness." As you finish, you follow the scriptorium's ritual for completed work. Taking a small brush of rabbit hair, you dust the parchment lightly to remove any debris. Then you sprinkle fine sand across the page, absorbing any excess ink that might smudge. After allowing it to sit briefly, you tilt the parchment, letting the sand slide off onto a collection tray. The completed pages will now rest until thoroughly dry before being gathered for binding. Brother Nikephoros rings a small silver bell, signaling the official end of the night's work. The monks rise and form a circle once more, this time for the prayer of thanksgiving that concludes every night vigil. We give thanks, O light of the world, that you have preserved our minds through the watches of the night and guided our hands in the work of preservation. May what we have copied serve to illuminate minds yet unborn for your greater glory. As the prayer concludes, you feel the profound weariness that comes after sustained concentration. Yet there is also satisfaction, the deep contentment of having contributed to the preservation of knowledge that might otherwise have been lost to time. This text you've helped copy might survive centuries, might cross oceans and continents, might inspire thoughts in minds whose language you would not even recognize. The monks file out of the scriptorium toward the refectory, where a special breakfast awaits those who have kept the night vigil. Fresh bread with honey, dried fruit soaked in wine, and a strengthening porridge of oats and nuts. These foods will restore the body after the night's demands, providing energy for the day of rest that follows a full night of scholarly labor. As you walk through the cloisters, the rising sun casts long shadows across the courtyard. The monastery is coming fully awake now, with brothers moving purposefully toward morning prayers and daily tasks. You feel the strange dislocation that comes from having been awake while others slept, a sense of having inhabited a different version of the world, a quieter, more contemplative realm that exists alongside but separate from the daylight hours. You know that after breaking your fast, you will retire to your cell for several hours of sleep before rejoining the community for midday prayers. This rhythm, nighttime vigilance followed by daytime rest, creates a continuity of consciousness within the monastery walls. At any hour, someone is awake, someone is praying, someone is preserving knowledge against the erosion of time. As you sit in the refectory, your limbs heavy with honest fatigue, you reflect on the night's work. The methods developed by generations of monks to maintain alertness through the darkness have served their purpose once again. The coffee and spiced teas, the aromatic candles, the mindful movements, the communal chanting, the strategic consumption of certain foods. All these practices combine to create a sustainable system of nocturnal scholarship. Brother Cyril joins you at the table, his eyes reddened from the night's efforts, but his expression serene. "I saw your work," he comments, as he breaks his bread. You captured the section on intellectual virtues with particular clarity. Aristotle would be pleased to know his thoughts continue to exist because of hands like yours. This thought, that you form a living link in a chain connecting ancient minds to future ones, fills you with humble pride. As you sip the warm, honeyed milk provided to ease the transition to sleep, you know that tonight's efforts were not merely about staying awake, but about maintaining the sacred attention necessary to transmit wisdom across the centuries. Tonight, like countless nights before, the scholars of Pantocrator have pushed back against the darkness in its most literal and metaphorical forms, using their disciplined minds and trained hands to ensure that the light of human understanding continues to burn through the ages. As sleep finally begins to claim you, you feel yourself a part of this greater purpose, this quiet, essential work that connects past to future through the devoted attention of the present. This moment fades softly. Now, let's continue on, deeper into the past. Thank you for spending this quiet time with us, drifting through forgotten echoes of history. If this story brought you peace, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs rest. We'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Until next time, sleep well, dream softly, and good night.